Department of Agriculture, Thomas Vilsack, will deliver a seminal speech on climate change and agriculture. Remarks will begin soon, but be sure to stay for a conversation shortly after between Secretary Vilsack and the Dean of the College of Agricultural Sciences, James Pritchett, where they will cover the main points as well as invite the audience to ask questions. As a friendly reminder, please remember to keep your mask on indoors and practice social distancing when feasible. Thank you very much. Please be seated. The program is about to begin. Good morning. Please welcome to the stage the Chancellor of the Colorado State University System, Tony Frank.
Good morning. Let me add my welcome to all of you to Colorado State University on behalf of members of our Board of Governors that are here, our faculty, staff, and students, and on behalf of President Joyce McConnell here at our Fort Collins campus. A special welcome to members of those who are viewing the Salazar Center for North American Conservation through their symposium who are with us virtually. President Joe Biden appointed Tom Vilsack to be the 32nd Secretary of Agriculture a couple of months ago. But he wasn't new to the job, having served 2 terms as the Secretary of Agriculture, the 30th Secretary of Agriculture, in the administration of President Barack Obama. Prior to those 2 terms, Secretary Vilsack served 2 terms as the Governor of Iowa, also serving before that as a state senator and a mayor. Originally from Pittsburgh, Secretary Vilsack holds a bachelor's degree from Hamilton College and a law degree from the Albany School of Law. Those cover the what and the where and the when, but anyone who knows the Secretary would tell you that they don't cover the who. Tom Vilsack has been someone that, in an age of political division and lack of partisanship, has always sought the common ground, being deeply interested in what unites us as Americans and what unites us as human beings. He's been committed and remains committed to agriculture and the proposition that science and education can sustainably feed our world. In that, he finds common ground with the cornerstones of America's land-grant university system and the things that have underpinned us for over 1.5 centuries. And so it's not surprising that we find common ground around this event. It's perhaps not surprising as well that there's so much agreement in that President Abraham Lincoln created this land-grant university system on the same day that he created the position of Secretary of Agriculture for the United States, July 1st, 1862. I think if Lincoln were here today, he would be proud to see what has grown from the seeds of those land-grant universities, and he'd be proud of our Secretary of Agriculture. Colorado State is similarly proud of our programs in agriculture and the sustainability of all of the campuses in our system. And so we're proud to host this event. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce to you the 32nd Secretary of Agriculture of the United States of America, and a man I'm proud to call my friend, Tom Vilsack.
Chancellor, thank you very, very much for that kind introduction. And just so everyone knows, that's about as kind as he can be to me. I can show you some tweets and some text messages that would see, you'd see the real Tony Frank, the Cub fan. But I really appreciate the invitation and certainly appreciate the friendship, which has been forged over a number of years. And I will tell you that it's a real honor for me to be speaking with all of you today at the Salazar Center's International Symposium on Conservation Impact. You know, Ken Salazar is a friend, really excited about his opportunity to now be ambassador. He is a man who's got a lot of talent, but also a lot of titles. He was a great senator from the state. He and I were partners together in the Obama administration cabinet. And obviously he had a great run as well as Attorney General of this great state. So he is a true public servant. So I'm glad to be here in a center named after Ken. And it's good to see Governor Ritter here as well, and also a good friend, a family friend, and someone who has been a leader in energy across this country. And it's great to be back on campus, to be with many friends who are dedicated here to the great mission of a land-grant university, and who understand the land-grant's role in helping American agriculture meet the food needs of our nation and the world while doing so sustainably. It's especially great to see in the audience some students here today who have an exciting, but I would say a challenging future ahead of them. So much has happened since I was last on campus. We've all been impacted by the pandemic. And it's also been true that while dealing with the pandemic, many in our country, particularly in the West, have also been dealing with the wrath of climate change in the form of a severe and profound drought, intense and raging wildfires, and destructive and life-threatening storms and floods. Farmers, ranchers, producers, and foresters have experienced all of those impacts, and that's what brings me here today to speak to you. And I want to speak to you today about the near-term and the long-term impacts and how the Department of Agriculture at President Biden's directive intends to help. Let me begin with the near term. A combination of rising temperatures, heat waves, early snow melt, and low rainfall this year has brought record-breaking drought to folks across the West. How bad has it been? Well, the drought monitor shows that more than 40% of mainland U.S. has experienced some level of drought since September 2020. And more than 20% of our country has experienced extreme or exceptional drought since April. For the 6 states that make up the U.S. Southwest, for the months January 2020 through August of 2021, it has been exceptional, with the lowest total precipitation rate and the 3rd highest daily average temperature rate recorded since records were started in 1885, which together have imposed on the West an unyielding, unprecedented, and unforgiving drought. Livestock producers in the West have borne the brunt of this drought, and sadly, many are now faced with the possibility of having to liquidate their herds after spending a lifetime building them up, because they simply cannot grow or cannot afford the feed to take care of their livestock. If you travel across the country, you'll find in the South and in the Northeast that the situation was not too little rain, but instead too much rain and wind, causing significant damage to crops, livestock, and farm buildings. All of these folks need help. And it's not just weather-related concerns that grip our nation's producers, but challenges arising from zoonotic diseases, which now pose threats never thought possible in this country. When African swine fever impacted the hog industry in Asia, we took notice. We recognized the risk, but felt safe because, after all, an ocean separated our hog industry from this devastating disease. Today, we now realize we're not immune, and our entire hog industry here in the U.S. is on alert because African swine fever is now in the Dominican Republic and in Haiti. So the Dominican and Haitian farmers need our help, which means that our farmers need our help. What do these 3 climate and disease-related events have in common besides the need for help? Well, each of these calls for help can be answered by USDA through a tool and the use of funds from what is called the Commodity Credit Corporation. You know, in the midst of another challenging time for American agriculture in the 1930s during the Dust Bowl, President Roosevelt and Congress created the Commodity Credit Corporation and provided it with resources. And it has become a powerful tool that allows the USDA to be nimble, aggressive, and prescriptive in confronting challenges faced then and now. Let me explain how we can use this tool to help with drought, storms, and African swine fever. An African swine fever outbreak in the United States would have a devastating impact on our economy, on our swine industry, and would cause billions of dollars in lost production and in trade. It would force many farmers into bankruptcy and cost thousands of jobs. It is critical to keep this disease out of our country, but we have to act aggressively. To help the Dominican Republic and Haiti contain this disease so we can prevent this grave threat from reaching our shores. So today I'm directing my staff to work with the Office of Management and Budget and the Treasury Department to transfer up to as much as $500 million of funds from the Commodity Credit Corporation to prevent the spread of African swine fever. Now, we'll use these resources to support a robust expansion and coordination of monitoring, surveillance, prevention, quarantining, and other activities in the Dominican Republic and Haiti to help eliminate the risk, while also shoring up our efforts here in the U.S. to prevent the disease from getting to the mainland. With this action, we intend to do everything we can to protect our trade, our economy, our pork industry, and the jobs connected to it. We'll also tap the CCC to work with our traditional disaster programs to help farmers repair store damage. reduce the high cost of feed, and pay down the high cost of transportation that many livestock producers are now incurring to haul feed and water to their operations. After all, the goal here is for producers to stay on the farm and not have to sell the farm. The pandemic and climate-related events exposed our overall food system as highly consolidated, fragile, and I think less resilient than we had thought. Major disruptions in supply chains have arisen from our ports and even into our school lunchrooms. American producers are frustrated by the fact that empty container ships are leaving our ports, while agricultural products sit on the dock waiting to leave our shores. As you all know, exports are critical to the bottom line for our farmers, and any disruption can cause stress and concern. So those who rely on exports for their profit or their employment, they also need help. At the same time, many school districts across the United States are now being told that shortages exist in the food normally ordered for and provided for our school meals. Many contracts with long-term vendors are being canceled. Without supplies or vendors, the schools will be unable to meet their full responsibility of providing quality meals to our children. Meals our kids need to be at their very best. School nutrition officials and our students, they need help. Where can those who need help moving product overseas or moving product down a lunch line seek that help? That's right, the Department of Agriculture and the Commodity Credit Corporation. Today, we're also announcing our intent to provide resources from CCC to do what we can to relieve the bottleneck at our ports and also to help our schools continue to feed our children wholesome and nutritious meals. All told, we'll transfer a total of $3 billion from CCC so we can immediately look for ways to provide the help needed by those combating African swine fever, those needing to feed livestock, those repairing storm damage, exporting our products, or feeding our children. I spoke earlier of near-term challenges and long-term challenges. Let me now focus on the long-term challenge of climate change and how farmers, ranchers, and producers might be able to adapt to the changes, mitigate the impacts of those changes, and create a market opportunity by embracing climate-smart agricultural practices. Now, fortunately, policymakers in Congress and in Washington, D.C., and in state capitals understand the need to act and address climate change. Congress is now considering a significant investment in climate-smart practices in both the bipartisan Infrastructure and Jobs Bill and the Build Back Better Reconciliation Bill. The House of Representatives Agricultural Committee will soon do a markup of a Senate-passed bipartisan bill called the Growing Climate Solutions Act, which will aid in the development of markets for sustainably produced products. All of these measures, and others calling for the support of precision agriculture and better forest management, all underscore the need for action. Now, the Biden-Harris administration has called for a whole-of-government approach to achieving net zero greenhouse gas emissions economy-wide by 2050, which scientists say is required to avoid the worst impacts of climate change. The President's climate plan also sets a goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions economy-wide by somewhere between 50 and 52% by the year 2030. Agriculture, forestry, and rural America can, will, and I believe must play an important role in meeting the President's 2030 reduction goal and the net zero emission goal by 2050. Before I share with you what we're doing at USDA to advance efforts on climate to meet those goals, I want to briefly state the values driving our efforts. Because as important as what we do, it's also important as how we're going to do it. USDA's work on climate change will be focused on partnerships with agriculture, forestry, tribes, states, businesses, universities, nonprofits. Our work will be incentive-based and will work to help farmers create new income opportunities on a voluntary basis with markets for agriculture and forestry products. Our work on climate-smart agriculture and forestry will be farmer, rancher and forester led. Because after all, climate-smart agriculture and forestry simply has to work for our farmers, for our ranchers and our forest owners, or it won't work for our climate. Getting the science right regarding the role that agriculture and forestry can play in reducing greenhouse gas emissions is also critical, and I think you all know that here on campus. USDA will invest in the science and quantification of carbon sequestration and greenhouse gases so we can truly demonstrate to our country and to the market the benefits of our investments. Finally, equity will be a vital consideration in all we do on climate change at USDA. We must ensure that programs we support and the investments we make are available to everyone, and that we take special steps to ensure that farmers of color and small and medium-sized farming operations are able to participate and prosper as a result of this work. Now, we haven't developed our climate work in isolation. This past spring, we solicited the views of tribes and states and other stakeholders across agriculture and forestry on how we should develop our own department's climate-smart agriculture and forestry strategy, which we released in May. As we move forward in the months and weeks ahead, we want to make sure we're able to provide more opportunities to engage with and listen to our stakeholders and consumers. USDA has a wide range of Farm Bill conservation programs that provide cost share and financial assistance to farmers, ranchers, and forest owners to implement a variety of conservation practices. Now, these programs provide an opportunity to work with producers and landowners to implement a number of conservation practices that sequester carbon, that improve soil health, that protect our precious water resources, that help reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and promote resiliency. And we're already leveraging our existing programs to target climate outcomes and to encourage the voluntary adoption of climate-smart solutions across the landscape. In a way that's good for producers, and in a way that's also good for their bottom line. For example, earlier this summer, USDA's Natural Resource Conservation Service, NRCS, invested over $50 million in our Environmental Equality Incentive Program, EQIP, in climate-smart agricultural and forestry practices, $10 million of which was designed to support climate-smart practices through voluntary conservation practices in 10 targeted states, and over $40 million of which was to help producers in Arizona, California, Oregon, and here in Colorado, to help them alleviate the immediate impacts of drought and other natural resources challenges that they were facing on working lands. And just this week, NRCS announced another $75 million for 15 partner-led projects through the Regional Conservation Partnership Program, alternative funding arrangements effort, that focuses on climate-smart agriculture and forestry and other conservation priorities, as well as improving access for historically underserved producers. Now, 2 of these projects were developed by partners here in Colorado, including the Gunnison River Drought Resiliency and Restoration Project, which is designed to restore wetlands and riparian areas while improving irrigation water management on working ranches in 3 distinct tributaries of the Gunnison River. The other project is the Upper Arkansas Forest Fund project, which is designed to reduce the risk of severe fires in the Upper Arkansas River watershed. And earlier this year, we also announced several changes to the Conservation Reserve Program to increase participation and to increase the climate benefits of that program. We accepted more than 2.5 million acres in Grassland Conservation Reserve Program sign-up. Now, that was more than double last year's sign-up. It allowed us to surpass our goal of signing up 4 million acres by, in fact, signing up 5.3 million acres in all of our sign-ups. And the great state of Colorado was among the top states for producing contracts. Now, USDA is partnering with farmers in a creative way, as well with our crop insurance program, to promote climate-smart practices. As part of our Pandemic Assistance for Producers initiative, we created the Pandemic Cover Crop Program. Now, this provides bonus payments to producers who plant cover crop systems to protect soil health and increase carbon sequestration. And over the next 3 years, we intend to make climate-smart agriculture and forestry a priority in implementing all of our Farm Bill programs. Now, leveraging our conservation programs must also go hand in hand with efforts to provide good information, solid information about climate-smart agriculture and how it impacts our farms, our ranches, and our forests. Providing technical assistance will require strong partnerships with our states, our tribes, our universities, our soil and water conservation districts, and many others. To ensure our programs are available to all farmers, we'll also have to strengthen our work with the historic black colleges and universities, Hispanic serving institutions, and tribal colleges. And I'm confident that here at CSU, you're going to continue to do good work in promoting conservation. And I'm looking forward to the new Spur campus's contribution to be engaged as well. I know that there's going to be significant work done on water and food and agriculture innovation at that Spur campus. Now, a climate-smart workforce at USDA and in agriculture is also essential to prepare the department and the industry and our stakeholders for the changes ahead. By building climate literacy across USDA and across agriculture, we can ensure that we can deliver science-based, data-driven, and customer-focused information on both the risks and the mitigation opportunities. Our USDA climate hubs are increasingly becoming a first point of contact on climate change across the department. We're going to continue to support our hubs. We'll be investing in doing so, we'll be investing in our ability to reach more farmers and more stakeholders. Now, in January, President Biden also announced the formation of a new civilian climate corps. Now, this civilian climate corps builds on an existing foundation of public-private partnerships that provides job training and work experiences for young adults and veterans to accomplish natural resource objectives. I think here there is an opportunity for intersection as well on the CSU campus with your Together We Grow effort. There's an opportunity for a number of participants in that program to see the benefit of the Civilian Climate Corps. Specifically at USDA, at our Forest Service, we're looking for increased capacity through this Corps to facilitate an accelerated pace of fire risk reduction and response, reforestation, watershed restoration, and infrastructure maintenance. Now, I'm in the West, and so I'd be remiss if I did not mention wildfires. You know, in 2021, as of today, we've had over 45,000 wildfires that have burned more than 5.7 million acres across U.S. On July 4th this year, the multinational coordinating group moved the national wildfire preparation level to level 5. Now, this is the highest level of wildland fire activity, and it was at the earliest time in the past 10 years and stayed there for a record 69 days. This isn't an aberration. Climate change, coupled with a history of putting out natural fires over the last 100 years, has resulted in conditions in our forests and wildlands that are very dangerous. Overstocked forest and dry conditions linked to climate change are a difficult combination, and it means that we're going to continue to see difficult fire seasons in the future unless we act and act now. To reduce the threat of wildfires, the Forest Service has to increase dramatically the treatments in our national forests. Our challenge is simple. To state, we have to more than triple the number of acres we treat annually with scientifically sound thinning and prescribed fire methods. Improved markets for wood products through new products like mass timber and cross-laminated timber can certainly help underwrite the cost of restoration while storing carbon in wood products over the long term. Now, these markets will also maintain incentives for private landowners and tribes to maintain and manage their forests. But on federal lands, so much of the timber is of low value that these markets alone are not enough to underwrite the cost of these treatments. Treating more acres is going to cost more money. And while the President's budget increases investment in treatment, the resources called for under the Infrastructure Bill and the Reconciliation Bill are absolutely essential and will guarantee that our forests will get the attention they desperately need. Now, science, as you all know here in this great land-grant university, is critical to our work in agriculture and to our work at USDA. And at USDA, we've targeted and will continue to target our climate research efforts to better understand the full range of potential climate impacts. We need to accelerate the development of science-based solutions. We need to inform the deployment of adaptation strategies. We need to continue to develop new surveys and new tools and analyses to pinpoint barriers and to access and build these tools and make them available to our farmers, much like Climate Farm, a tool that you all here at CSU helped to develop. Our farmers, ranchers, and producers need these tools. Now, it's critical that we leverage our work with the efforts of the private sector to create a research pipeline for new technologies and systems to mitigate climate change. The fact is, meeting the commitment of zero emissions by 2050 will not happen based on current technology or even with significant public research and development alone. The private sector is engaged and needs to be engaged in advancing solutions, and they are, such as new fertilizer formulations, new methods of protein production, a new generation of feed additives for ruminants, and advanced manure systems. Our Agricultural Research Service is establishing a comprehensive climate change center of excellence that will ensure that these technologies and others are positioned to be adopted out in the field. The center will create a research pipeline for climate-smart technologies. We'll cooperate with the private sector to assess the performance of new technologies and conservation practices, and we'll partner with our conservation programs at USDA to enable our producers to adopt these climate solutions. Now, we're also going to play an important role in supporting and promoting clean energy. We believe biofuels today reduce greenhouse emissions by somewhere between 30 to 40% relative to gasoline. So we think that biofuels for the foreseeable future will have an important role in climate efforts. Just this month, USDA joined a government-wide Sustainable Aviation Fuel Grand Challenge with the target of making 100% drop-in sustainable aviation biofuel by 2050. This is a market potential of 35 billion gallons, nearly double the current biofuel industry. Our efforts at USDA are going to focus on feedstock development and on supply chain efficiencies. We'll also invest in biogas. Livestock methane is an important contributor to climate change, but it can be captured and turned into energy through methane digesters. And over the last 2 years, we've invested in 18 digester projects at USDA to capture and reuse methane as a renewable energy and fuel source. Methane digesters and manure management can't address all of methane emissions, so we'll continue to look for ways to reduce methane emissions through improved feed mix and additives that can reduce enteric methane. All of these programs and tools are great, but the reality is we've got to do more. We've got to do more to promote partnerships and investments, particularly from the private sector in climate-smart agriculture and forestry. U.S. consumers, food processors, and retailers are demonstrating an increasing interest for agricultural commodities produced using climate-smart agricultural practices and for forestry practices in the construction business. Internationally, important trading partners are considering criteria and preferences related to greenhouse gas performance of imported agricultural commodities and associated food products. These represent new and expanding markets, which can provide an opportunity and a challenge for our farmers and ranchers. The challenge to undertake and embrace climate-smart agricultural practices and to take full advantage of this growing market opportunity. A wide range of market-based approaches exist to incentivize climate-friendly agricultural commodities. They include voluntary markets for carbon, where agriculture and forestry can provide carbon credits, sustainable supply chain initiatives, and insetting, which is an approach where companies reduce emissions within their own supply and production facilities. Opportunities can also include markets for low-carbon biofuels and renewable energy. Now, these activities offer the potential to leverage private sector demand to incentivize adoption of climate-smart practices, while also providing for farmers new income streams. However, barriers exist and are hampering the growth of these market opportunities. Market barriers include the risk and the cost to producers in adopting these practices. These costs can be very expensive, and the high costs of measuring and verifying greenhouse gas reductions adds to that expensive cost. There are concerns by many in the environmental community about the ability to accurately measure and track the climate gains from agriculture and forestry. Our farmers, ranchers, and producers are great stewards. We need to make sure that we can give them credit for what they are doing and what they will do. This initiative that we are launching will place a high premium on accurate greenhouse gas accounting. It's absolutely vital if we're to establish consumer confidence in these emerging products and markets. So today, we're beginning a process to develop what we refer to as a climate-smart partnership initiative that will help finance the production of climate-smart commodities through a series of large-scale pilots and demonstration projects funded from the USDA. And as importantly, to also help as part of this effort to finance the steps necessary to properly measure and validate the environmental response and result from these practices. This initiative will provide support to farm groups, businesses, states, tribes, and other nonprofit organizations that are working with multiple producers and landowners to apply climate-smart agricultural practices on farms, ranches, and forested areas. The goal is to scale up the deployment of climate-smart agriculture and forestry practices, while also increasing to our understanding of how best to monitor, measure, and track the greenhouse gas impacts of these practices. Let me give you examples. USDA might support a group of dairy farmers seeking to reduce emissions from manure and increasing carbon sequestration on cropland as part of their milk production system. We could fund corn and soybean producers interested in producing a climate-smart commodity for their retail buyer, which might also qualify them for participation in private market carbon credits or other ecosystem service credit systems. We could resource a biofuel company in its development of a low-carbon biofuel, or help organic producers quantify the climate result of their organic practices. Each project will include efforts to measure and track the climate benefits over time. Now, these projects will help create new market opportunities for producers and landowners through the production of commodities that meet the growing demand for sustainably produced products in the U.S., and will help to preserve and expand export opportunities for these commodities, as well as potentially qualifying for ecosystem market credits. Now, I want to be clear, this initiative is not a carbon bank or a carbon market. It's not even a conservation program, although both may be available to producers as a result of this program. This initiative is first and foremost a commodity program, one that seeks to empower farmers, ranchers, producers, and foresters to produce climate-smart commodities, meeting domestic and global consumer demand. Now, as a commodity program, and one that helps promote markets and exports, the CCC resources can be used to fund this effort. And if they are used, they will be at a significant level that will allow us to accomplish the purpose of this initiative without compromising CCC's other important role to support Farm Bill programs and meet emergency needs as they arise. In thinking about launching this initiative, we listened carefully to agriculture, forestry, conservation, and other stakeholders, and especially took note of the recommendations of the Food and Agriculture Climate Alliance, a broad-based coalition of farm, forestry, and conservation groups. And we're not finished listening and learning. The first step forward will be the publication in the next several weeks of a formal request for information, so that before we begin implementing this program, we want to make sure it works for agriculture and forestry. We want to make sure it's equitable. We want to make sure it's adequately resourced and has the strongest environmental and scientific integrity. We'll seek comments for a period of 30 days from publication and work any modifications that we learn necessary into our final proposal. From a once-in-a-century global pandemic to the continuous and intensifying threats of climate change, agriculture and forestry and rural communities are not short on challenges. But for every challenge, there is an opportunity. And we at USDA want to help farmers, ranchers, producers, forest owners, and rural Americans to help meet the challenge and to take full advantage of this opportunity. In doing so, we intend to build our ag and food system back better, stronger, fairer, more resilient, by providing the help that is needed most and by lowering the threats of climate change, with resilient supply chains, with new market opportunities for farmers, ranchers, and forest owners, with access to the goods and products that consumers want here and around the world, and with more economic opportunity and good-paying jobs in rural America. Now, these challenges and opportunities are of this moment, and they require us to work together. We believe there's no time to waste. The students here on campus at CSU are the next generation of leaders in our food and agricultural system, and I believe that they are depending upon us to leave them a better system than the one that we inherited. So let's get started. Thank you very much. I'm so used to wearing these doggone masks, I didn't take it off, so I apologize for that, but you know, it is what it is in today's world. So thank you all very much. It's great to be back.